Welcome, everyone. Apologies, you might be noticing my voice. I'm a little bit soft spoken today. I'm getting over some of the weather that we've had out here in California. It's been pretty wild lately. We had like record breaking storms and rain, and now there's land masses falling off of mountains and stuff. So it's pretty crazy out here in California. The world is desperately trying to wipe California off the map, and I can't really blame it for doing so. But in the interim, I'm suffering some of the consequences of that. So, just bear with me. I'll only have you here for 30 or 40 minutes. Today, I have one of my all-time favorite guests returning to the show, the great Mark Yaxley. He is the co-founder of Strategic Wealth Preservation over in the Cayman Islands, and it's basically they're one of the largest, if not the largest, precious metals dealer in the Cayman Islands, and it's really important. I think to talk about different kinds of investments that we should be making, especially people in my kind of age range, because I really wish I would have gotten into this stuff when I was, 11 or 12 years old. It's always a solid investment no matter what. And really, when you hold these things in your hand, I did this the last time that I had this kind of discussion. This is in particular a Canadian maple leaf, and it's 1 ounce of silver. And when you hold it in your hand, it's in plastic right now, but when you really kind of hold this stuff, it's instantly recognizable as a form of wealth and currency that will never go away. Even when they're talking about to transition the world into like one global digital currency, which is freaky, and I don't know what that would even entail for all of us. But if they do that, even if they do that, I would imagine that gold and silver would still be, they're always going to be worth something, especially silver, because what we learned from Mark the last time he was on was that, the silver market in particular is kind of ever expanding, where the gold market is sort of shrinking. When you think about it, gold is used in a lot of, electronics and a lot of consumer items, but it's sort of in those industries, and then it's in jewelry. It's like those are the two big things that gold is really used for. Whereas silver, on the other hand, is used in medicine, it's used in clothing, it's used in electronics, it's used in it's decoration, and it's jewelry. It's the silver market seems to be kind of exploding, where the gold market seems to be shrinking down. And at least for the time being, silver is still very affordable. You can get your hands on a pretty substantial sum of silver for not all that much money. Whereas this, a coin this size of gold would be $1,700 or something. Whereas this piece right here is probably worth $23. Which is it's nothing to bat your eyes at or anything. I mean, we're still talking, ballpark 250 to 300 for a 10-ounce bar, which is money. It's a lot of money. But considering that the same ounceage, if you will, of gold is like in the tens of thousands, silver is very affordable. And it's a very good metal to kind of get your hands on and get started in the precious metal, investment sphere, if you will. But that's just my 2 cents. I don't know, what do I know? I'm no expert or anything. That's why I'm having an expert on here in a couple of minutes. And as soon as he joins me, there's a rumor. Mark and I have been talking back and forth for a while, setting up this meeting, and there's a good chance that he might be joining us actually from their vault in the Cayman Islands, from SWP's vault, which would be pretty remarkable and pretty exciting, I think, if you ask me. Nobody asked me, but if you ask me, I would say that's pretty exciting because, it's cool to see what's in there and see how, a top quality vault operates. So, cross your fingers with me. We'll see if that happens. And he should be here any minute. So I'm going to take a quick break until he arrives, and then I'll be right back, and you won't even know that I was gone. So hang tight.
Set up for this kind of thing. So
I'm actually really excited to be in the vault. I've seen this vault a number of times in some of your interviews, and I was pretty stoked to actually get kind of a firsthand view of it. It looks awesome. That the picture that we're getting behind you is like it's like one of those cartoon setups that you only see in the movies, like gold bars stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, man. No, happy to do it. Let me just close down a couple things on my side.
Sure.
Make sure that I don't have anything interrupting. And I wanted to ask you, do you want me to grab a couple of smaller products?
By all means, man. This is whatever you want to do.
What I will do is just grab a couple of products off the shelf. So just give me a minute. I'll grab a few things, then we can get started.
Cool. Awesome. Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here again. It's always really exciting to get a chance to talk to you because I'm a little bit further along in my own personal investment in precious metals, but I'm still very much a novice. So it's always good to kind of bounce off some questions from someone who's an expert in the industry. I'd like to formally congratulate you for being right on the money with silver prices at the moment. The last time you were here, I think you called a ballpark of like between 23 and 25 bucks American, and that's like right where we're at. So that was like really spot on. Do you think that we can kind of expect to continue to steady out here, or kind of like see this trend for a while?
Yeah, the consensus, Chuck, and it's good to be back, is that we should expect to see more, increases that are favorable pricing for silver investors. That's kind of consensus word on the street. Now, I try not to be overly optimistic. I've learned throughout my career that every time I really think the table is set for an absolute shoe-in, that tends to be when the rug gets pulled on you a little bit. So I'm cautiously optimistic this time. I think all the market conditions are basically there for gold and silver to go on a pretty strong run. Potentially new record highs for gold. Silver's got a long way to go to get to its record high, but when we talk about adding a few dollars per ounce to the silver price, definitely possible. And the number one factor I'm still watching, and I don't tweet every day, but one thing I do tweet regularly is watch the US dollar, the Dixie. US dollar index, because the dollar has been trending down, and as the dollar softens, the price of gold and silver, it's a negative correlation, so the price of gold and silver will go up. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's gone down about 10% from its high, the US dollar, and I expect it's going to go down another 5, possibly 10% over the next 6 months or so. So that would be good for gold and silver.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, just judging, but I've got some friends abroad, and even here at home, I have a lot of friends who purchase things from over the pond, and they're saying that the U.S. dollar just is not converting the way that it used to. It's really not in a very strong place right now, which it raises some concern for me just on some other fronts. But as far as gold and silver is concerned, I mean that's good news, especially since I think I got in at a pretty decent time. I got in when silver was like sitting at like 19 bucks an ounce. So I'm feeling pretty good, just personally. But that's cool. What I've also noticed is, and this might have something to do with me continuously talking about precious metals, but I'm getting a lot of ads for like gold subscriptions where you're just kind of giving this, offshoot company money every month, and they're supposedly putting it in a fund that should reflect its like that money's value in gold. Do you know anything about those kind of services? Would you recommend them, or is it best to just go old school and deal with someone like yourself, someone who this is what you guys exist for?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really ever go wrong with old school, physical metal, something you can hold in your hands and be the direct owner of. That's really important. This is what my answer will boil down to. When you own physical metal, whether it be at home or at a vault like SWPs, there's no third party risk because you are the owner of this property. It's considered personal property. And that's really, really important. And the problem with, and I'm not saying every subscription-based program, kind of what you're referring to, or every fund, because this applies to ETFs, this applies to, these savings plans that convert your dollars into precious metals. It applies many different product types within our industry. They're not all bad. There are some good ones out there. There are some that have been long-standing, well-managed programs. But the problem or the mistake that a lot of investors make is that they don't read the fine print, and they don't actually understand what they own as an underlying asset, and they don't understand what it would cost them to later convert it into physical if they want to take delivery at home, for example. So I've seen countless times in my career where someone's like, well, I have this piece of paper and it says I own gold or silver, but when I called the company to take possession and they said it would cost me X dollars, or I couldn't redeem because I didn't own enough of it or whatever. So read the fine print before you sign the contract, especially when it comes to gold and silver, because there are a lot of different offers out there and it can be confusing for people who are novices, especially. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And to your point, just the simple fact that you can hold it in your hands is, because premiums fluctuate as well. And if it's an unscrupulous company, who's to say that they won't just, jack up the premium on you, and then before you know it, the money that you give them over years and years just isn't worth what it should be worth. So yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with you. Agree with the expert as to, if you can hold it in your hand, it's yours, and it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, you touched on a good point there, actually, Chuck. I just want to. It's funny because I've been having conversations along those lines. There's a lot of predatory selling that's happening in the U.S. right now, to the point where regulators are starting to really crack down on it. I get this information from U.S. Custodians that we work with in the United States, and they've told me that behind the scenes they're getting calls and subpoenas basically from U.S. regulators because of the predatory selling techniques that are being used. And what that boils down to, what that actually means, is what you touched on, is the really high premiums that some companies are charging for products. And they're positioning this product, they put it in a really pretty package, and they tell you it's kind of this very unique limited mintage and that you absolutely have to have one. And you'll see these advertisements on TV, so it kind of legitimizes the whole thing. You're like, well, it's on TV, so it must be okay. But the truth is, you're paying 40, 50, 90% over spot. You're never going to recover that premium. Like, it's gone, So to your point, it is a very good point. So don't get caught up in the hype of these, limited mintage, unique products. Stick to the brand names, the Royal Canadian Mints, the US Mints, the Johnson Mattheys, the Pam Swiss. Stick to the brand names and stick to the retailers that have been in business a long time, and you'll avoid a lot of that nonsense.
Yeah, that is really an important point. We touched on this last time I had you on, because at the time I was like obsessed with what the products looked like. I was just blown away by, the Canadian maple leaf, for example, is just beautiful to look at. And then you mentioned that the mints do a good job, but you also said that the more that you get into your investment, things could, I think you used the word doorstop, is like it could look like a doorstop for all you care. It's just about getting the ounceage. And I'm kind of moving into that frame of mind now. I'm still kind of boyish with it. I still love the way that they look. But yeah, that's, for something that it's like they put collector value on it. They're like, oh, it's a reverse proof and it looks so flashy and stuff. And then they're charging, $3,000 for an ounce of gold. So I've definitely noticed that. I've also noticed silver fractionals, which I know that gold often comes in like grams and 2 grams and stuff, but I have a couple of them here, and they're just these teensy tiny little dimes, and they go for about $5 a pop, which is, it's a high premium. I picked those two up just for demonstration purposes. But I haven't been in too long, but I haven't really seen silver fractionals like that before. Are those kind of new?
Yeah, they've probably been around. They've been around a few years now, but you're right. They're affordable. Say if you can buy something for $5 and you're in the gold or silver shop and you're like, hey, I got $20 in my pocket, why not?
Sure.
But and it's fine to buy a few. It's fine. They're great gifts. You can give them to a nephew, someone's birthday, whatever, or just have a few in your own collection, like you said. Be boyish. It's fine to do that, but on a larger scale, as you ramp up your investment in precious metals over the years, you certainly don't want to be buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of high premium fractionals, because number one, you only need so many fractionals if you're going to barter or whatever that usage might be, which is a fairly rare occurrence anyways. Sure. And the second part of that is, that's like compounding. When you're paying high premiums all the time, you're just compounding your own costs, because you could be using that saved money to buy more ounces. And that's really what you should be doing. Get the most ounces for your dollar. And over the long term, that compounding effect of savings is to your own benefit. So, I would just be cautious. Like you said, you've noticed the trend. You're like, hey, these fractionals are out there, but should I buy a lot of them? I'd say you shouldn't buy a lot of them. Buy a few, don't buy too many.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, since we're on the topic of products, I noticed you brought a couple out for us. What do you have there? Was that a 100-ounce bar that I saw of silver?
Yeah, so this is I got a couple things. I mean, the 100, well, behind us, these are 400-ounce gold bars. So these are really the most awesome product on the market. Yeah. So those, each one of those is about 800,000 US for one of those 400-ounce bars. This one, very popular, 100-ounce silver bar is very popular with investors. They when you can afford, or when you buy a 100-ounce silver bar, your premium per ounce will come down. You have like kind of that volume savings versus, buying, for example, 100 1-ounce coins. You can buy, one of these 100-ounce bars, and you'll actually save enough to get like an extra, I don't know, 4 or 5 ounces out of the deal. So definitely worth your while. The same is true. I brought a couple of gold bars. You've got like a 1-ounce gold bar. This one's from the Royal Canadian Mint, which are super popular with investors. It's a great little product. It comes in the secure packaging. So it's got some security features built into it. Fairly low premium, but again, if you went out and got like a 10-ounce bar, instead of 10 of these, again, you'll save, I don't know, 1-2%, and then you can buy more silver with that money, or you can, buy more gold with that money. So again, it's just reinforcing the point that we've driven home in the past, is like, when you're going out to make your purchase, make your investment, think about it like, yes, it's a momentary decision that you're making, but kind of factor that into a longer term plan where you're like, every little bit of money that I save and buy more metal with will really benefit me long term. So keep that in mind next time you're shopping for products.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Now, what is this is a broad question, but what are rhodium and palladium are rather expensive, and so is platinum. I know what platinum is, but is rhodium and palladium, that's kind of an obscure market as far as I'm concerned, just because I don't know what they are. So are those do they have like a growing market as well? You mentioned last time you were on that the silver market is kind of growing and expanding, where the gold market might be sort of getting a little stagnant. Can we expect the same with rhodium and palladium? Do they have like industrial uses, medicinal uses?
Yeah, almost exclusively industrial uses. So there, you can buy rhodium and palladium in coin form. I believe rhodium, bar or coin form for both, but it's a very small group of people really that's investing in general in palladium and rhodium. It's a small market metal, like you said. It's one that most people may not have even heard of, especially rhodium. So not a whole lot of trading going on in that sense, but what they are used for is in the production of vehicles. So any car that has an exhaust system that is trying to reduce the amount of noxious gases released into the atmosphere. So most first world countries, a lot of second world countries have standards in place that whether it be a scooter, a car, any kind of motorized vehicle, a bus, they've got these systems in place to try to reduce the amount of toxic stuff that's released into the atmosphere. And platinum, rhodium, and palladium have these amazing attributes that actually help in that process. So that's where this stuff goes. That it gets mined and it gets turned into vehicles. I think it's like 80% of the world's consumption is actually in this case. So what does that mean in terms of, will the price go up? That price will track the amount of cars being sold worldwide. So what dictates how many cars are being sold worldwide is kind of the macro economy. So if the economy is lagging, then the number of cars being sold also lags, and the amount of ounces being used will lag as well. So right now, that's one of the reasons you're seeing palladium trending down. You're seeing rhodium trend down again. When the economy picks up, when we get through this recession, the economy picks up, I would expect that rhodium, platinum, and palladium will all start to increase in value again.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. I just want to backtrack real quick. You said for one of those 400-ounce bars behind you, that's 200 grand American.
800 grand American. So yeah, 400 ounces multiplied by today's spot price was like 1930, I think. So almost $800,000 per bar. They're just like the ones you see in the movies, basically. Not for every investor, obviously. The price point is really high. Yeah. And you can get the same kind of cost savings premium wise just by buying 10-ounce bars, kilo bars. You don't have to go for one of these bad boys here, but some guys prefer them, and that's why we have a bunch in the vault.
But for everyone who is listening and watching, if you can look at one of these things, that should be a life goal of yours. This is a self-improvement test, so shoot for one of those at some point in your life.
I'm still shooting for my first one, Chuck, so I hear you.
Well, congratulations on everyone's progress, I suppose. I wanted to touch. I wrote down a couple of questions here that are hard to ask without sounding like kind of a tinfoil hat should be on my head. But considering the possibility, the slim possibility of a financial collapse, or I've been reading a lot of kind of obscure articles about the possibility of like a digital currency that might be implemented in certain areas and maybe implemented right now, just in a weird kind of Blade Runner scenario. What, having trouble even wording the question, what benefit does, in your own words, what benefit do precious metals hold in that kind of scenario where we change the entire makeup of our financial system, where dollars kind of go away and we're now looking at digital currency and crypto and stuff like that? Personally, I think precious metals they're always going to hold value for exactly what we're just talking about. There's always industries that use these things, so they're never going to not be valuable. But what do you think? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting question, and the first part of the answer, I think, is so two-part answer. First part of the answer is, whenever you have a very big transition moment in history, so like Bretton Woods, for example, following the Second World War, when everyone gets around the table, like literally gets around the table and discusses how the world is going to be reorganized. That's kind of what you're alluding to, like a new monetary system or new controls, like which countries are going to take over other countries, and drawing new lines on the map. Whenever that happens in history, gold and silver actually play into that discussion heavily, because the countries that have the most reserve assets, gold being a great example of a reserve asset, they have more political sway. They have more wealth, therefore they have more political sway. That is why the United States, who was holding a lot of gold at the end of the Second World War and a lot of wealth, came out of those discussions in a very, very favorable position. So when things like this gets discussed, and you hear about it now, you're like, oh, Russia and China are getting together to launch new currencies. They're talking about gold-backed currencies. So they're already using gold as part of the leverage for this discussion. And this is the second part of my answer, basically, is it's fine to have a digital representation of money or a digital currency or whatever you like to call it, but what really gives that value? I mean, what's going to give that value is an underlying asset. And there are a few underlying assets in the world that are as well established as gold, silver. You could say the same for platinum, perhaps, as well. So I think in these discussions, there will always be a place for gold, but especially, and this is why central banks continue to buy record amounts of gold, is because they are trying to position themselves, or place themselves in a position of strength during these international discussions, during these very high-level talks. And so, to answer your question, I think there's a place for it, and I think there always will be, and that's why gold has been around for 6,000 years. It's part of our society. It's part of our culture. It's very important. Yeah.
I agree. Well, you mentioned central banks, and just the kind of the makeup of the global financial system that we're all kind of accustomed to. Have you noticed? Well, I know you've noticed this, but have you noticed sort of intentional suppressing of the prices of gold and silver? And if so, why do you think that happens? And I mean, markets are kind of manipulated by big money all the time, but why do you think the price of gold and silver, why do you think they would want to suppress those prices so much? If you've noticed this trend.
Yeah, it's tricky, and so manipulation and suppression are two things that obviously come up fairly often when you talk about gold and silver. And I always say I've never been privy in my whole career. I don't trade at that level. We don't trade at that level where that manipulation or type of manipulation would be occurring. So I've never had the first-hand privilege of witnessing, being in a room or hearing people talk about it. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do? So I will preface by saying that. Every market is manipulated. A mentor of mine, wrote a whole book about it. He said, who cares whether you think it's manipulated or not? It doesn't matter, because you and I can do nothing about it. We have absolutely no control. So we can talk about it and theorize about it, but if we're exchanging our US dollars, our Canadian dollars for gold and silver as an investment, the only thing you and I actually care about is a return on that investment or the preservation of our capital. It is not like the fact that we think it's manipulated is not going to give us a better return on our investment. Actually, it might give us a worse return, because it then changes our mindset in this investment. We should be going into this with a very clear head and saying, I can't control the market, so I'm going to study and play by the rules in front of me. Why would people want to do it though? The theory would be basically to keep the dollar weak keep the dollar stronger and weaken, the value of gold and silver, so that, we don't go back to the gold standard that, that US dollars continue to be, the reserve currency, and there's no challenger to that. But again, that's just people speculating, honestly. No, the only other reason that people would manipulate the price in the open market is for financial gain. So if they are trading in order to cause a certain market movement, that's just for short-term financial gain. So that's another reason that traders would do it as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was an excellent answer. I know that was a really loaded question, and those types of topics are they're tough to talk about without kind of slipping down certain rabbit holes, especially especially depending on the kind of company that you keep, which
I think those are the type of questions you need to drink like a bottle of red wine and then sit around a campfire with your buddies and hash through that, because that's otherwise it's a tough one to answer sober. I'll leave it at that.
I totally agree with you. And with that, I think we can probably wrap this up. I'll go ahead and I'm going to ask you to just stick around with me for just one more minute after I stop the recording.
Sure.
But while I have you on the recording, I'd like to say thank you again for joining me. It's always an awesome experience, and I always learn something when I talk to you, and I like to learn things. So I really appreciate you coming by, man.
Always a pleasure, Chuck, and good seeing you again.
Hello, and thank you for watching that episode or listening to that episode and making it all the way to the end. I'm always very proud of you guys and very impressed when you make it all the way to the end of one of my episodes. Very, very impressive. You guys should be very proud of yourselves for doing that. It's no small feat. So thank you for that and congratulations. And I hope you enjoyed it. I always love talking to Mark. He's great to have on. He really is a pleasure and a privilege to have him on and to have him kind of teach me about something that I really want to know more about. And I hope you guys are interested in it too. I think gold and silver is a cool investment. I think it was a cool conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you come back next week to enjoy another cool conversation. And I hope you go and enjoy my Instagram at Here's Why Pod, my Twitter at Here's Why Pod, and my YouTube channel at Here's Why Chuck, where you can watch these episodes as well as listen to them if you want to. So yeah, go and do that, and we'll see you there soon. We'll see you next week, and I'm looking forward to it. Love you guys. Bye.